This episode was co-produced by SIGTIC, the leading Swiss angel investor club, which connects smart money investors with innovative and highly scalable Swiss startups. SIGTIC has published the Swiss Angel Investor Handbook, packed with the best practices for people that want to learn how to invest in early-stage startups and avoid common pitfalls. It's also a useful guide for startup founders that look for angel investors. Go to angelhandbook.ch to get your free copy. Again, that's angelhandbook.ch.
This is the killer interface for AI. It sees with you and it provides the feedback kind of in the context of the reality. You cannot get it better. And there is actually little doubt that this will be our main interface with the digital world. Smartphones will go out of the game.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Silvan.
Bolko, Tomas, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to be your guest here at your offices today. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming. I guess that's unusual.
Absolutely. Tomas, you're the co-founder and the CEO at CREAL, a company that is enabling the ultimate augmented reality. Bolko, you're the vice president at SIGTIC, a startup investor yourself, and also a board member at the very same organization, the leading angel investor here in Switzerland, actually. I think you just celebrated your 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
10 years already. Yes.
It's amazing. So, Tomas, we are here very close to the EPFL in Lausanne, and that's also where you actually were a researcher before you started your own company. What sort of got you into entrepreneurship in the first place compared to just continuing being a researcher?
Yeah, thanks. That's, I think, obvious that it is a very big career change, but I would also say that's entrepreneurship as a form, that's not the motivation. And I think even it should not be without some content or mission to have, right?
Yeah.
But still, to answer your question, I think the entrepreneurship, what's attractive is the scale of the challenge on it. It's very broad and it's very severe. And I had certain confidence that I have, let's say, the proper attributes and attitude to take this challenge. So that was the attractive force. Often it's not attractive force, right?
Yeah.
And from the research side, I would say there is still a bit, or was a bit of repulsive force. I don't want to say research is a bad career. I always wanted to be a scientist, but in certain stage of the career, it becomes more administrative job, right? And you start doing or learning more and more things about narrower and narrower subjects. So it just looked like there is no way back out of it. And I had the mission, that was the main point. I knew what I wanted to do, and it was basically not really possible in academic career, and offered more hands-on possibilities to still continue and basically postpone that less hands-on activities, which I anyway do right now.
I see. What was that mission that you were on that sort of pulled you away from research?
Well, that's what we do right now. It's really making virtual and augmented reality experience better. Because it was not good.
Mm-hmm. We will talk about that in a second. I'm really curious to learn more about that. You also mentioned traits of becoming an entrepreneur. You had them in you. What were those traits that you probably had in you that you said, okay, I'm sort of born to be an entrepreneur?
Well, not necessarily born, but maybe learned.
Okay.
I think what you need is a versatility. You need to be able to do completely new things. And, you go also, entrepreneurship is a lot of unknown in front of you. Should not be, but it is.
Yeah.
And in my research work, I actually changed the subject and field and quite a lot, like 5 times, and each time stand in front of the new challenge. And I think I always took it by default, actually, with out-of-the-box approach and delivered results. And at the end, you do quite similar things as in the entrepreneurial career. You have a problem, you need to solve it, and you need to sell it. The figure of merit is different. You need to write some documents and present it. So that's the most different thing, but otherwise it's quite similar in that. but you are not so much on your own. Often, unless you are really full professor, you don't decide 100% of what you want to do. You have a quite big autonomy, or at least I had, but not 100%. And that's also what is very different. Suddenly you have the full freedom to navigate and pivot and whatever.
I like that, the freedom part. Absolutely. Bolko, switching over to you. You obviously, through SIGTIC, invest in startups here in Switzerland. What was attractive for you, or why did you decide to get started as a startup investor in the first place? And maybe why was a stock portfolio not enough?
Yeah, it's a good question. And with hindsight, maybe you do something different.
Right.
But I've been running technology funds for more than 30 years. I lived in the US. Therefore, I always have a fascination for stocks. For example, I told my investors 10 years ago to buy NVIDIA. It was back at $1.
Wow. That would have been a good investment.
And it's always a mix. Therefore, you have some public listed stocks, but I like also what I call entrepreneurial capital. Therefore, you invest in the future stars. And therefore, I like startups a lot because you're very close to the entrepreneurs. You learn about the latest technology which will come, like NVIDIA's technology, which I followed for 10 years, will come to the market maybe in 10 years. But you're early on. It's very exciting.
How does that return profile then compare? I imagine publicly traded companies are a bit different than startups who are still very much private companies. I know the fun part, working closely with the founders, that's a really rewarding thing to do. But how does that reflect in the return profile?
The return profile of startup investment should be better than listed stocks over time. Good. If you pick NVIDIA, it's tough to beat, to be honest. But the idea is to make significant money with that. It's not the first idea, but still important because it's our own private capital which we provide.
Yeah.
And we all have to live and earn. In general, we assume that we can do a significant multiple on our money, much better than any VC fund, at least the average VC fund. That's the idea. The issue is you only count at exit. Therefore, it looks very good on paper. The J-curve means that you first lose some and then the other one survive. CREAL is good because it survived so far and is on a nice upside cycle of the J-curve.
And I imagine the 10-year anniversary, that's also now sort of the only time when you actually start seeing the big returns, right? Because usually it takes 5 to 10 years to see a decent return. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, in Switzerland, it's even a bit longer.
Right.
It's more 8 to 12 years on average. Sometimes you have your occasional exit, like we had after 1 year or after 3 years.
Wow.
At very big ones. We just had announced a very big one, Beekeeper. Some of ours are invested in that. But otherwise, it takes time. My first startup investment where I gave the first check is now a unicorn. But it doesn't mean the return is yet there. You wait for the exit, the IPO, the trade sale, etc. The good news is it compounds. If it grows the valuation also at the same time.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
I fully agree.
But you need 10 years.
That's true. Tomas, let's talk about CREAL. We heard you sort of started with the research here at EPFL, and I think there's a virgins accommodation conflict. We saw it on your website. Please explain to us, what is that exactly in the VR and AR space? What is that problem that you are tackling with CREAL?
It's very simple. It's just about conflict between how our two eyes see and one eye sees. So the two eyes are moving like inwards and outwards. That's the convergence. Okay. And the accommodation is actually the eye focus. And they normally work in sync, are synchronized together. And in all this virtual and augmented reality world, or all the devices, you don't have the focus. It's focus depth. Yeah. You see flat images, so you will always have that wrong accommodation. And the consequence of it is a little bit like a seasickness. Whenever we have conflicting inputs, the brain just assumes we may be poisoned and you feel sick. Not everyone.
Wow.
But it's enough if some people feel sick, and there's a significant number. I do.
So that's also a bit your own experience, your own problem that led you in that space.
Yeah, in fact, that's the reason why we started doing what we do and why we are called CREAL. It's about seeing real. Yeah, I just felt horrible in the first VR experiences that you could try in like 2012. The the really more consumer grade or enterprise grade. There existed in 70s, but then it became more real.
I love that, because usually when we do podcast interviews, most of the founders, they start with some sort of solving their own problem. I think that's a really good start, because then you're motivated. You have an intrinsic interest to solving that problem. But then at one point, you probably had to go out there and identify, am I the only one who has that issue, or are there other people with the same issue? What did you do after you identified that problem to really see if it was commercially viable?
Yeah, so it was quite known problem at that time, especially since Meta acquired Oculus. That was the $2 billion acquisition. And you could already hear quite a lot of talk about the unsolved problem, the divergence accommodation conflict. Scientific papers existed about, this is pleasant or unpleasant. Interesting thing was there was no device that could actually provide that comparison, how it is correct. You had to only compare with the real world, but that's not one-to-one. Then startups like Magic Leap, they were raising billions of dollars and promised actually the solution, including solving that focus issue. So when it has so much attention, it is a real problem. Or at least problem which someone is actively solving with a lot of money. It was definitely on the table of all of these big techs. But what you didn't know is, how difficult will be even the rest or all of it to deliver.
And Bolko, from an investor perspective, you hear Apple, Meta making big investments in that space, right? But then at the same time, I always imagine that there's a certain degree of fear. Like, they have so much money, they have so much resources. Why don't they just solve it themselves, this issue, this very specific problem, if everyone faces it? What did you think back then?
Yeah, Silvan, it's a good question. There's hundreds of great engineers.
Right.
Now, why they don't do that in 1 or 2 years, what you did 10 years work on?
Exactly.
Or so. That's always our fear. The good news is that typically the market needs to be validated. Therefore, if one of the big techs invents something in the market, all the other 10 companies have to do something similar. Therefore, there's not only one solution, there's typically 2 or 3 solutions. Yep. The second thing is, I've been in Silicon Valley each year, and I'm still astonished when I see what comes out of the Swiss universities in terms of research. Yep. The thing which Tomas is doing here and the research, you can't find the same in the US. They do other stuff, very good stuff, but this is very unique. Therefore, we have in Switzerland fantastic research, the solutions we can't find sometimes in the US. This is a field where I feel we have it. Now the question is when you bring it to the market. Okay. And of course, in technology, there will be always the risk of someone coming up with something better. Therefore, you have to be fast enough.
Absolutely. And what actually got you interested in that space from an investor perspective in the first place? What made you think this will be a game changer for the industry or even the world, so to speak?
Yeah, there are 2 aspects. First of all, I followed technology for 30 years. Therefore, I'm talking to a lot of people. Therefore, we had Google Glass many, many years ago, and for privacy and other reasons was more or less a flop. Therefore, we are not yet ready, but now the market is slowly evolving that, and we can talk about use cases later, which are super interesting. The second thing, I have kids. You buy them the Sony VR, they play with it a little bit. They are a bit disoriented and crash the TV even while playing. That happened to me too. And then it gets thrown away. Therefore, all solutions in the market currently had this problem of dizziness for 10% of people say, like Tomas described. Therefore, it was clear to me we need to overcome it. Otherwise, it will be not a broadly distributed product.
Right.
And in the end, will be so about AR use cases. And we can talk probably a bit later on those.
Absolutely. So now we hear a bit more about the investor perspective in the technology space, Tomas. And I wonder, where do you currently stand with the development of your proprietary technology?
So we have, I would say, the basic components which make our light field display commercially viable. That the first versions are finished. It took a very long time. These are silicon chip, custom made, custom built for us. So we have it. And from commercial point of view, we already licensed the first version of that to a big name in the industry, to Zeiss. That's still for a rather big and costly device for vision testing. And now we have something close to display for glasses, but we can fit it into something that looks like a reasonably big
crazy.
glasses. So we are not going to sell the glasses themselves. We are the technology company making the displays and selling it to the producers of the end product.
You mentioned Zeiss as one of your key partners. Who are other customers that you could potentially work with to really segue into these different use cases? Because I can imagine looking at this device, there are so many potential use cases in personal entertainment, but also in industries. So what will your focus be?
So first, this is a very, very broad question because there are the different possible applications and then companies doing it.
Right.
So to answer with whom we work, namely, I cannot, but there are some quite big US companies. For the rest of the question, I would split it into, everybody is dreaming about consumer AR glasses, and they should be the next smartphone, the level of smartphone usefulness. You have it all day, use it for everything, from cooking to neurosurgery. So that's the big dream. And for this, everything has to be perfect or close to perfect.
No.
And there are earlier applications, and they already exist. They are not very visible because they are inside factories. And this is really for guiding of, let's say, less skilled or less trained worker remotely or already with AI. And I think this is the best kind of starting example of what it will be about. Because the glasses are like your personal assistant that all the time sees with you. And with AI, then thinks for you, gives you all the guidance. So the consumer can imagine better. You walk through your day, it basically guides you through the day, makes a lot of decisions easier or even makes the decisions. Easy example, when you travel, it just tells you what to do.
Right. Like you're at the airport, it just shows you where your gate is and sort of navigates you to that, all of these little things.
Yes. So of course, that's the small thing. But once you imagine that it's kind of permanently at hand on your eyes, it's seamless because it's like glasses. To most people have glasses already.
Bolko, we talked about the big investments that Meta and Apple made in that space and also many others, of course. I felt now this was a bit pulled back, right? The AR, VR space, at least from the public perception, that Meta came a bit away from their heavy bet. But at the same time, we now have a new shift with personal AI devices. So how do you see the development in the industry? What is changing or shifting? Is it still a very positive development, or were there also these setbacks where people maybe said, oh, this space might be a bit too hyped for now?
I'd like to push back a little bit on this.
Yeah, of course.
Because it might be not as visible, but actually the environment for AR has improved with AI smart glasses. Yes, I know that from technology, every other year there's a new hype.
Right.
And it's true that the products, Apple with the Vision Pro and also Meta with Orion, which never hit the market really, were what we call brute force approaches. Right. Meaning you put all engineers in one room, you want to have an optimal solution, everyone has something, and in the end you have a device which costs $3,000. That's obviously nothing which will be sold in huge volumes. Mm-hmm. And Orion was even much more. Therefore, also Meta's solution for AR. Therefore, there's a dead end. We believe we have the critical component for that. Therefore, now with our solution, the prices will be much, much lower, much more affordable. And as Thomas said, also it doesn't hurt your eyes and you don't get dizziness. Therefore, it's clear. Therefore, the eye smart glass is the first step to that. Mm-hmm. Because you suddenly see people going to conferences. Oh, I see here my teleprompt. Wow, it's pretty cool. Instead of looking there, where's my teleprompt? I see it here. Really cool. Or I talk to someone in another language. And here I can see the translation. That's also pretty cool. Therefore, suddenly you see it's a push from the consumer saying there's usefulness. And we believe AR will be then the next step in the next couple of years. And potentially also, I think it will take a bit longer, replace a smartphone. But in the end, you see I have an eyeglass. More than 50% should have an eyeglass. Therefore, it looks like this, maybe a little bit different, and has much more functionality. Why I wouldn't use it if it's available?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I like your vision of potentially replacing the smartphone.
Yeah.
This could really happen.
That could happen.
Or people probably will.
And you can switch it off. Look also at the Ray-Bans now. It's quite popular. the new ones.
Exactly.
Therefore, we see it as an interim step to the next step to AR glasses.
Thomas, coming back to making these solutions also commercially viable, I know it's a very long development cycle, right? To bring something like this to market, what were the biggest challenges so far along the way for you and your company?
So you basically described that. It's really very capital intensive to jump to your vision directly, or basically impossible. And even those who did it, that was the Magic Leap $4.5 billion raised. They did the big jump at once and it failed. So yeah, the scale of how it is capital intensive is the main problem. And you really have to find some intermediate steps. So you may, at the beginning, you may say, there is no smaller minimum viable product than that complete chip and similar. And you have to learn to find it. So that's really the main challenge. Second is you, of course, keep convincing the companies and investors that you are on the right path and you manage to live this way. You raise funds through investments and projects, or we sell license, let's say, upfront before it is delivered. So you have to be very creative. But I think that element of future vision, because startup is a lot about delivering something which has a high value in the future and the investment is discount on that future value. I would return back to what was in question for Bolko. The AR glasses, there was a lot of discussion about what's the killer application for it. But now the discussion is more like, this is the killer interface for AI. It sees with you and it provides the feedback kind of in the context of the reality. You cannot get it better. And there is actually little doubt that this will be our main interface with the digital world. Smartphones will go out of the game. There is actually another pressure for that. They are commoditized already. Mm-hmm. And the industry have to find, there is a huge pressure to find next devices, because you can't continue just competing in completely commoditized market. Only the branding then remains. There are few players. The glasses are really the next big game. That's how it is seen.
It really sounds like we're sort of headed to an inflection point in that sense, where the smart glasses will replace the smartphone. How do you price? What is your business model behind your technology? Because you also then have to make money out of this. How do you do so? What is the right business model to approach this big shift?
So I won't answer what is the right business model, because I, for example, don't think we maybe do the optimal one.
Okay.
But what we do is we license the technology. So imagine you are a producer of smartphones or some other such devices, and you want to bring the AR glasses on the market. You have your internal development, or not, maybe even not. That's how it is often done. These companies actually often go to the actual manufacturers, which are mostly unknown names for most of the people, choose what is there and glue a logo on it. That's how it works. So the startups play the huge role in it. You actually really breed the technologies. And there are many attempts in parallel, and the big corporations more or less wait what survives and proves to be usable. But then they take it, put it together, sell it. So that their power is making it at scale and selling it. So we play that role, which I think is the weak point of these big corporations. We do the heavy lifting earlier. We are very agile, very compact, smaller team. And it's kind of not my opinion. It's known startups do this much better.
Right. Is that also a bit your competitive mode, that not one of the big players copies you, as we talked from the investor perspective already, that you're fast and you really have this technological edge that the big players might not be able to pull off the same way?
Yeah. So first, yes, we are very focused on solving problem which is difficult at the big corporations. If some project takes a longer time, then managers have another incentives to move to, more money-making projects. That's how it supposedly works. I never worked in a big corporation like that, but let's say I read about it quite a lot, and we have our consultants who did. So we are really concentrated and move faster. We have amazing team with people with experience from AR glasses projects at Intel, which was here, at Magic Leap, now from Meta. So we have pretty big confidence that we have all, we need to be better and faster in that. So yes, that's part of the offering. The capacity to do that and the team which we build and keep. When we speak with some people from inside of the big tech, you literally hear, we cannot imagine the level of inefficiency. Like the meetings forever and so on. And actually some progress is done. It's very little time and a lot of money per person per that time. So that's of course part of the value. But we of course create the value of what we create. That's the unique display on its own. And in this, it is unique. Of course, when we started, we didn't have a big head start, right? You have to build something and others could catch up very quickly. But after even a year or two, you start having a big head start when you really design the individual, very complex components like chips. You have a head start compared to anyone. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it will take time. Second part of that issue, I don't think it would be a big problem if someone released something very similar or even identical. I actually think it would be better for us.
Okay, in what way?
Well, it would create category where we could position ourselves immediately. We would be the second guys in the world. The people who would like to compete with the first one would be jumping on our solution. So I would actually wish it happened.
Is it also because you have to do a bit of education and sort of lobbying, so to speak, to really make people aware that you have a great technology that really solves big problems there, that if there were more people in that space, that it would not need that much education from your side and you just have, okay, let's execute.
Exactly. That's a huge, huge problem. This category doesn't exist kind of at all in products. And in fact, even the, let's say, products with the problem, like the existing AR headset, this is not doing that well. I mean, it's growing, but it's way behind its promises. And the category of correct displays, which really visually correct, doesn't exist at all. And you have to really convince a lot of people that this is important. Too many people still actually didn't have the negative experience because they didn't even try that or didn't try the device enough long time. And the solution which we provide is really important when you need to wear the glasses whole day. When you need to have your correct prescription correction. So we have to evangelize. We have to convert a lot of people to evangelize on our behalf. It would be much easier if the category existed. We could just position ourselves in existing map.
So this is a really tough job to do, but also a really rewarding one if you succeed at doing so. Coming back to the investor perspective, I love that switch between founder and investor. Yeah. We talked about the strategic edge. Okay, the trend is clear. It's clear where we headed to, but then you had a very specific case with CREAL to invest in. What sort of early traction convinced you to make that investment, Bolko?
Yeah, it's sometimes your stomach.
Right.
Therefore, you see a lot of startups per year and only few where you feel that's the right team and the right theme, which is very important. And then you start to do your due diligence. Therefore, I saw Tomas pitching at AMD actually. And then you look at this and say, it's hardware. This is expensive. Because a lot of my startups are in software, which is nice because you see the revenue steadily growing, hopefully at least. Yeah. It's easy going to venture capital and saying, this month is 10% better than last month. Look at this. Here it's much more binary. What I did then, though, is I knew a little bit that the market is moving that way. And as I said before, you have to look 10 years out. Mm-hmm. We're not yet 10 years in, but not too far from it. Therefore, what could happen in 10 years? Therefore, is the theme right? Then the second thing is you check on the founder. Therefore, I called his professors in different countries and said, what is Tomas for the personality? Is this pattern he wants to do, is that really relevant? Is that specific? It's important. Is Tomas a team player? How does he behave in conflict situations, in crisis situations?
Right.
Now, and then can I talk to someone who knows better about the technology? Therefore, you spend quite a few days on trying to figure out, basically to find a red flag. And if you don't find a red flag, you say, okay, then if I'm convinced that is a person which has such a patented technology, and I have to stress again, optics is difficult. Optics is super, super difficult. It's really difficult. It's not that you can hire someone in 2 years, he becomes a good optical engineer. It doesn't work like this. Therefore, we're very glad that here at EPFL, we have this team. That's part of that. It gives this cloud. Then I put my first check down. Nobody else wanted to invest. I had to call a couple of people, like from the SIGTEC community. Others also agreed with me, joined, and then eventually we found the money. But it's very important for us as SIGTEC that we tell people, try to do the due diligence. A lot of people still think startup investing is donation. And then people say 90% of startups fail. Sorry, but in my portfolio, 90% of startups do very well so far. Good, I don't know at exit, as I said, we will see. But it's very important. If you do the due diligence, if you invest together, and that's a special thing also about SIGTEC as investor club. If you have 5-6 people looking at this, obviously we have several networks. We could support also Thomas over the years in bringing people in, like Ari Lüdi, who was our chairman until lately, or other investors who joined the different groups. And therefore, you get this network of people supporting the startup, but also the due diligence, trying to figure out, is there something wrong here at this point? And therefore, not so many startups are left at the end of this process. And then I say, okay, now I did all the work. Now I have to do the work and invest. And then you wait and help and support.
And help, exactly.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Thomas, Bolko and the SIGTEC team did their due diligence on you. What sort of due diligence did you do on SIGTEC that you said, yes, I want to have them as investors?
I would say I didn't actively, but SIGTEC was a good name. So
that's true.
You trust the label to a large extent. And of course, as a early startup, I mean, we heard already before, do due diligence on your own investors. I say, who can afford to do this due diligence? We need to get it through. And maybe we did at least spoke with neighbors and similar, but very, very, very little.
In the end, you also needed the money, obviously. Right?
Yes.
Hey, did you know that Swisspreneur just published a book? That's right. We've spent the past year writing Swiss Startups, a compact view of some of the most amazing startup journeys in Switzerland, from scrappy beginnings to world domination. If you love listening to our podcast, then this is about to become your new favorite book. Find it now in all major bookstores or click the link in the show notes to order your copy from Helvetic today. So how is now the collaboration? You're both sitting here. It looks a bit like it's definitely not your first time here in the offices, Bolko. How do you support the company after you invest in them?
It's definitely hands-on. And I see it like babies, no? You put some seeds down and then you hope you have at some point a harvest. And there is storm coming every other year. Every year, a couple of storms, and make sure that your baby is still alive. Therefore, I'm on the board of CREAL since early on. I've done the first check, if I may say, basically. And hence, I'm in constant exchange with Thomas, trying to help where I can help and support. I can't be on all my startup investments on the board. Therefore, it's one of very few where I have the time, because it's very time intensive.
Yeah, you have to do it right or not at all, right?
Yeah, you have to be there in terms of problems. You have to be supportive. You have to do connections, very important. And and try to avoid errors, which you all make from time to time.
What was the most helpful support that you have received from SIGTEC? I know there were probably many with introductions, supporting, working in or on the business together, but is there one thing that stands out for you?
You named like 4 of the things which I would put on very equal ground. I don't want to name the money because, of course, in that moment, it takes you off the ground. It gives you the credibility and also access to the network and know-how. It's a complete package. Money alone, probably, that's not good enough. Having someone helping you with the network, but without skin in the game may also not be the same.
True. Yeah, it's a great combination in that case. Yes. You also announced your funding round, another equity round, so to speak, last week. It was in July 2025. Before we actually started hitting the record button, you said, it's great. You get a lot of publicity by announcing a funding round, but even more important would have been the commercial announcement that you have Zeiss as a basically commercial partnership. Why do you think that is, that we celebrate these funding rounds like it's a huge achievement when, as a matter of fact, that's only the time when the work starts, because now you took on the investment and now it's game time. You need to deliver. Why is that such a thing here in Switzerland?
I don't think it's only in Switzerland. It's everywhere.
Fair.
And I don't have good answer to it. I just think it's because that's that early stage startup mentality. The fundraising and fundraise, it's the achievement. And then I still remember that video, which I think was a meme. Many people may remember it. You have a lot of these celebrations. You win certain competition. You get some money here and there, and then you get hit in the face. And there is the logo market on top of it. So a little bit later, we start celebrating much more that actually commercial achievement, that business achievement. But I don't see the same, the shared enthusiasm about it from journalists. Actually, they asked us, and do you have some news about fundraising? Or say, well, we actually will have. So they were very much interested in that part, while we see it more like not failure. It's good, of course. But business goal milestone achieved is much, much more important, much bigger for us, for investors, for the startup life itself. And it's not valued in the same way. Bolko, I think you said because people maybe don't understand that type of specific deal. So the audience is much smaller. The fundraise is for kind of everybody understands it.
Fair.
And maybe we also didn't make enough clear. It was quite a big deal in terms of money and with big lifetime value. I don't want to say the exact number, but it's a huge deal. So
congratulations. That's a big milestone. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Zeiss is the tech leader in optics globally. Yeah. Apple has chosen Zeiss as the technology provider for AR in the Vision Pro. And this company has a licensing deal, or we have a licensing deal now with Zeiss. We are partners. And I mean, I'm going to an eye doctor, therefore I know the pain. Silvan, you don't have that.
Not yet.
But you can imagine how it is. Yeah. You go out with your eyeglass, it's not fully perfect or so.
No.
And it costs a ton of money. And you feel, is it really good, the eyeglass? Or is it not? The industry can revolutionize so much with our technology that we are very, very, very confident that this partnership with Zeiss will be huge for both.
I love that. And that's the right thing to focus on, business impact, not the fundraising announcement.
Business impact. And you have sometimes to be patient. Success doesn't come overnight.
Tomas, if you look a bit into the future, what is your timeline now with the new funds closed, new commercial partnerships lining up? What are your immediate next milestones to hit?
So I would split it into two categories. One is we have really that still the dream promise, which can be, of course, monetized overnight once it properly clicks with the right person in the right place. So that's really the complete solution for consumer augmented reality glasses. It's quite unrealistic we would deliver it all on our own. It's a huge ecosystem, but we have a critical component for it. So that's one part. And I would say here, you need to more plan like this can happen at every point. I don't want to be specific about our plans, but we have. And then there is the defense side. Defense in the terms like, not receiving too many goals. So we have our own more gradual steps. Mm-hmm. So really delivering the displays for more niche enterprise applications. And this we see 18 months before we can really complete the integrated or the product with our display integrated in it. And there is even third part, which is that vision care side. That is kind of, I would almost describe it as a running business. And there is still some potential to go farther. And we still, of course, that's the last stage of our defense. We still invest our effort in it.
And where do you want to take this company? Because you're defining a new category. You have multiple big business opportunities at your hand. At the same time, also really innovative and completely new technology. Do you want to do a strategic exit that you get acquired? Do you want to do an IPO or maybe even some spin-offs and create all the different business units that you can address in separate companies? What is your vision for the company?
I think there are two aspects of it. One is what I would like, and second is what is pragmatic, what is realistic.
Yeah.
What I would like from day one, okay, it's not concrete. It's really get the perfect solution of everyone's eyes. I can use it. It's great. It's that dream which I wanted to realize when we started. The
really
company.
mission driven. Yeah.
How it is done was the second part of it. So when we speak about how, of course, I would dream about building a company that delivers the end product, new name, new brand, new Apple, Google, Then that is the pragmatic side, and that's really the technology exit or product exit with some financial motivation by the buyer. But the biggest ones actually are not motivated by that. It's really what it does.
Right. And you are an investor, Bolko. Obviously, you want to see a return on your money at one point.
Yeah.
So it's probably more leaning towards the exit route or an IPO, which is also an exit, basically.
Yeah, I'm investing only in startups where I see the potential, at least that we have a unicorn there, at least $1 billion valuation. Therefore, I'm not investing in each software solutions or so, which have a small market. You heard it from Tomas. Now, how many smartphones we have out now? 5 billion in the world? I don't know the exact number. In theory, this component can be in any of the replacement of a smartphone at some point.
Yeah.
Good, not everyone will have an eyeglass, but let's say it could be in 2 billion or so. Therefore, the potential is huge. Will we get ever there? Who knows? Now we're fighting with the big boys at some point. Therefore, it's more likely that we license it or someone says we want that unique technology only for us.
I wanted to say probably to build the maximum value possible, you will probably need to build your own devices at one point, right?
Yeah, that's true. Especially if you see the first devices. So this one now, which looks like my eyeglass, a bit more heavier, people don't believe you. They see the pattern. You can show them some mock-ups.
It's looking good. I like it.
Yeah. You can show the progress in the little lab, but they want to see the end product. But we're very close to that now. We're really close to it. After so many years of work on that, things are really looking good now, and people starting to believe in it. Therefore, we were there. Now, scaling up and producing hundreds of millions of that's a different business.
Of course.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay. Because I have one question for you as a founder. You seem very mission driven, Thomas. Like, of course, if there's an exit, that's nice, but you want to bring these products, this technology to life. And often what we see here in Switzerland is that we have fantastic technology, but we don't have maybe not the grit or sort of, we don't believe in ourselves well enough that we can build a global category leader or completely build a company like Google or Apple out of Switzerland. What would need to happen that you say, we built this, we want to build a huge mega company producing all these glasses, replacing all the smartphones. What will need to happen that you say, we go this way, even if you get multiple billion acquisition offers along the way?
That's a very sensitive question because the answer of most would be to move to US and then you do it.
Right.
Really. I mean, unfortunately. But I think you are definitely targeting how to do it in Europe. And here, I think, I don't think it's a problem of the founders. The ambition is very often there, but you cannot turn the boat of the whole ecosystem in Europe. It's really the mentality. So that's one part. It's, let's say, the ecosystem, which I would describe a little bit like farming on a desert compared to the US. Really money are thrown on the scaling, which is less happening here. And then there is also the element that's in the founders and kind of in everyone. We do the research really, really well in Europe, and we don't do the business really well. It's really that mentality of doing the marketing, choosing simpler things to deliver and actually then build the business on top of it. Sometimes you are shocked how simple problem and solution was taken, got a lot of money and succeeded. No. And we try to do it too difficult. Like you start with that, let's do teleport, right? It's extremely difficult, kind of impossible, right, to do that. And you said that mission-driven. Yes, in fact, in the previous question and my answer, I said we would like to do this, but to be pragmatic, we think about exit and someone else will do that. So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate consequence of it. We unfortunately have to remain pragmatic, not continue dreaming or not moving to the US if we really want to stay doing it here. But I also wanted to return to one of the aspects. You asked me where we want to bring it, and I said we want to get that display to all the glasses on everybody's eyes. That kind of doesn't say why, right? It's just we want that everybody buys it and we profit from it. No, I'm genuinely convinced that this is a simply better communication device. And communication is the backbone of the society. So each time this improved, the whole society was elevated to new grounds. So this will be way more efficient, really connecting us together, connecting us to the growing digital world, that cloud, which is now full of the AI. This will make us part of it rather seamlessly, painlessly, and it will be super useful. That's really the original motivation, I say. It always helped. It will remain like that. The communication technology is extremely important for the humanity.
Yeah, I was probably too young, but there was a time when we didn't look at our phones. We were talking to each other without a phone somewhere. In that sense, people can't imagine living without the phone, but there was a time without the phone.
Right.
Maybe communication changes the way Thomas says.
No, there are some interesting numbers. First, we use the eyes as the absolutely main interface with the reality. That receives like the 90% of everything we have ever received. And today, half of this is coming through a display. We spend 50% of our daily life looking at pixels on some devices. That's insane when you think about it.
It is.
Why it won't kind of, go back?
No, it's true. I'm also curious about the investor perspective from you, Bolko, on this. Are we not thinking big enough in Switzerland or in Europe to build category leaders and just sell the technology to the US and then they capitalize and really monetize on it?
I love that question because it's one of the reasons why we founded CREAL. Now, Thomas Dündorfer, Jan Filcher, Ralph Mojigate, etc. And all my corporate members. The mission was not only to make money. The mission was to create also technology leaders in Switzerland. We have these fantastic universities where we pay through taxes a lot of money to all of them. And then those fantastic talent gets hired by non-Swiss companies, let's say. Or the startups get acquired at 20, 30, 40 million because there's no growth capital in this country. Isn't that fundamentally wrong?
Yeah, it sounds like a bad deal, right?
It sounds like a very bad deal. And sometimes, like Thomas said, it's simply we are making things too complex. Now we are Swiss engineers. We are very, very precise in what we are doing. Therefore, sometimes it takes too long to get to the market. But sometimes it's also about financial education and the regulation in this country. Now, CREAL fixed, I think, now the seed stage. We're doing more than 100 deals per year. We were 0 members when we started. We are now 500. We're working with all type of VCs now. On a recent call, we had 110 VCs outside of Switzerland on the first call we did on the growth stage. But go to a family office, go to a pension fund in Switzerland and ask for growth capital. They will tell you, one banker explained me the other day, there's no deal flow in Switzerland. Why would I invest in Switzerland? But they're happy to sign in other countries. There are studies out of CREAL which show over the last 15 years, VCs in Europe had better return than US on average. People ignore it. Oh. If I may also say, pension funds can allow 5% of their capital invested in startups.
But they don't.
They don't. Why? Because there's no incentive for that. Yeah. It's better to buy a Swiss obligation, yielding after fees negative, because end of the year, you cut off and you have this. How you invest for 30 years for your pension, looking at each year at the end of the year. Plus, unfortunately, sometimes also the press comes. This pension fund has invested in that startup and that startup failed. That's not how it works. No? You invest in 10 startups, hopefully 2 or 3 doing very well. And of course, some will fail. Therefore, it's a combination of financial education. And that's very important because there's a lot of discussion where we pay taxes each year. But we are giving away billions and billions of money which you don't invest in what I call entrepreneurial capital, because of wrong systems and financial education, which thinks startup investing is donation.
No, that's just wrong.
It's totally wrong. You're young. You should stand up, claim out about this.
Yeah.
Because it will in the end mean young people have to pay so much more for older people, or we pay it through taxes.
I mean, look at it, right? If my pension fund would invest the same portfolio that you have, just 5% of their asset, I would be a very happy pension fund customer.
Yes, I think, again, 1% return in certain parts of your assets, I think you should be able to beat that with a startup
You should
portfolio.
be a bit more ambitious than that, yeah.
You should be a bit more ambitious. Therefore, it's something, but there are very, very few politicians who stand up. Actually, I think there's only one in Switzerland to say something about that. And there's a lot of backfire on this.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works. I mean, more people need to be part of entrepreneurial capital because it compounds over time.
Yep.
You can't pay always that with taxes.
I sometimes feel, we could do a whole episode on just
sure.
that topic. Maybe just one last edition here. But I sometimes feel that we are doing well enough. And maybe in the mentality of many here in Switzerland specifically, it's good enough. You know, we have no need, no pressure to take that risk and say, why should my pension fund invest 5% of their assets in startups? It sounds like a risky bet, which it is not if you do it right. You prove that basically.
Yeah.
But this being content with what you have might be just a bit of a mindset thing that is lacking us from accessing more growth capital as well.
Yeah, I told my clients 15 years ago, tech is invading all areas. If the mindset is still what you just said, I'm very worried.
Yeah, of course. Me too.
Because companies like Nestle, Novartis, Roche, they might be totally disrupted by technology. These are companies more than 100 years old, originally founded. They might be disrupted by technology. And then the jobs not being here necessarily good. We have a very good standard, etc. But still, we need to create large tech leaders.
Yeah.
I have one of the big unicorns of Switzerland presenting at my next SecTech event in Geneva, Sonar. The CEO was kind enough to come. Yeah. But we need many, many more.
Yeah.
And that's why it's urgent to start now, because it takes time to create that. Therefore, we should not be thinking about this. And look at the markets. 80% of the global stock market is US. Well, that's a good, that's relative to its size. It's okay.
Sure. But still, you might do better.
Tinny, no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Therefore, we should change that now, given that we have so much talent.
Exactly.
When people come, like Thomas from Czech Republic, to study here, come to CERN, we have fantastic institutions here. Why we don't make more out of it? So much more possible for our children.
We have much more potential, but also some homework to do.
Yes, I have some more homework to do.
I do want to wrap up the episode with some rapid fire questions. I just give you a short question and you have to answer in ideally one sentence. Let's start with you first, Thomas. What was the most counterintuitive lesson that you have learned in your entrepreneurial journey so far?
I think that was my opinion about what is the business to business and business to consumer notion. I thought business to business is more robotic, machine to machine, automatic type of dealing.
Yeah.
And B2C is more about social skills, empathy. It's exactly opposite. In B2B, you deal much more with the real people. And in B2C, you work with statistics.
I never heard that before. I really like it. That's a cool lesson. Bolko, we talked about red flags. What is the biggest red flag for you from an investment perspective?
Only one?
Only one. The biggest one.
Only one. A slow response from the founder at the beginning, before he got the money.
No.
After he got the money, that could be normal. But if it's even slow, before they get the money, then you move on.
You're out. Yeah.
Or sloppy and slow response.
True. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Thomas, why did you actually move to Switzerland to build your career? Why Switzerland and not any other country in the world?
I came to work at CERN, which was the international institution. So that was not really so much about going to Switzerland. It was about going to work at CERN. And for me, it was an absolute dream. It was like flying to the moon. And Then next to it is EPFL. I got offered place there. So I just went for it. But of course, Switzerland is a dream country to be. So
Wonderful.
on top of it,
That's perfect.
what brought me here, it was the unlimited opportunities.
I love that. That's really cool. That's the best marketing for Switzerland. Entrepreneurs, come here. This is the place to be. Bolko, hardware or software? Where is the real long-term value?
Hardware I like because you have differentiation. No? I mean,
Yeah.
if you do stuff nobody else can copy. Software, as I said before, is in less rocky space. Therefore, there's no answer. I have both in my portfolio.
A good combination of both.
A good combination of both. Yeah.
Last question for both of you. Let's start with you, Thomas. One word to describe the future of AR and VR in 2030.
We answer together.
CREAL. Perfect. That's actually cool. Guys, it was a lot of fun doing this conversation with you. Thank you so much. It's really impressive and also inspiring to see what you're building. And I wish you the best of luck and lots of success. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Silvan, for the great questions.
Thanks a lot.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.